life can hit like a sledgehammer. But guess what? We hit back harder. Welcome to Affirm That Sh. Somehow, I thrive. I'm Jennifer Rogers, your no BS guide to turning life's toughest moments into badass victories. Ready to flip the script? Let's affirm that life can be a bitch, but somehow we thrive. Welcome to this week's episode of Affirm That Sh. Before we get started today, I want to give you a caution. This may be a triggering episode based on Amber's story today. We will be talking around the subject of domestic violence. While many of us may have experienced this, know someone who's gone through it, or may be going through it, this podcast is not offering any type of recommendations, suggestions, or any type of protocols that you need to follow to receive or relieve yourself of those situations. What we would encourage you to do is to reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline. There you will find an abundance of resources and help to guide you or someone you know through their story. You may reach them at 1-800-799-SAFE, 1-800-799-7233. You may also text START, and that's START, to 88788. And with that, let's begin our podcast today. In a moment, you'll be meeting Amber. And her story is one of resilience, one of fire, and one of a rebirth. She is a woman who went beyond the eyes of the court, beyond the eyes of judgment, loaded up her baggage, and started a new life filled with encouragement, hope, success, and most importantly, love of herself, love of her children, and love of life. This is your first time listening to the podcast with us. We welcome you, and we're thankful you're here. We'll start by saying 3 affirmations, 3 times each. If you're in a position, I invite you now to close your eyes, take a deep breath in, and repeat these affirmations with us. If you're not in a position that you can do that now, I invite you to come back to this episode later, listen to it again, and say those affirmations at that time. And with that, let's go. Close your eyes. Deep breath in, and let it out. I am worthy of love that is honest, kind, and supportive. I am worthy of love that is honest, kind, and supportive. I am worthy of love that is honest, kind, and supportive. I believe in myself and the power I hold. I believe in myself and the power that I hold. I believe in myself and the power that I hold. I trust my ability to provide a happy, healthy life for my family. I trust my ability to provide a happy and healthy life for my family. I trust my ability to provide a happy, healthy life for my family. Right after this break, we'll be meeting with Amber and hearing her powerful story. Stay tuned.
Imagine a space where you let go, where the clamor of the world quiets and you meet your truest self. At Yukio, through sound vibrations, Reiki, and the wisdom of tarot, we help you release what no longer serves you, align with your energy, and renew your spirit. Begin your journey back to yourself today.
Good morning, Amber.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, you know, when you and I spoke and you shared your story with me, it hit me right in the heart. Because as our listeners will find out, you are a woman who is knowledgeable. You're a woman who is resilient. You're a woman who doesn't really put up with much bullshit in life. But you've gone through two, and I want to say that again so that everybody hears that, two domestic violence marriages.
Right.
And your story is impactful because you are someone who has the knowledge of what should and shouldn't be done. You are a trained, licensed, practicing counselor. You are the person with the tools in the toolkit, right?
Right.
So I want to open the platform up for you to start where you're comfortable in sharing your story, where it began, how you got there, what you picked up and what you've learned, really walking us through that shit. And then we'll move into how you come out of it, how you thrived, and how you're succeeding today. How's that sound for you?
It sounds good to me.
All right, sister, take it away.
Well, it's kind of hard because, like you said, there's two. So it goes back pretty far. The first one pretty, kind of set the stage for the second, I guess. The first one was I was young. I was not very smart, I guess, when it comes to those things because I didn't really know. I didn't really know. He was very verbally abusive. He was very controlling. And I thought that was just something that was normal. So I didn't think anything about it until it got bad enough. He'd throw things and didn't want me to be around my family, didn't want me to have friends. He ended up telling me basically I couldn't come back. So that helped me out in the long run.
So I want
Thankfully.
to pause right there. You said it started pretty early. How
Mhm.
early into your marriage was it that the way he spoke to you changed? The way he, maybe greeted you when you come in?
Um, it wasn't very long, maybe the first year. I mean, it was early.
Okay. And how
But
long were you in that marriage?
we were together for 5 years.
So within the first year, you started noticing a shift.
Hmm.
And you said it took a little while. You thought this was normal. So
Yeah.
would it be something where it was maybe just drops of language here, like one day we're really good, and then a few days later it's a different way he spoke. So it was very subtle in the way that he
Yeah.
changed his the way he loved you, basically,
Yeah.
or
And it
what he
was,
thought was love.
yeah. And he always apologized. So I thought, oh, he didn't mean to get mad or it was fine. It'll get better, but it never got better.
And so when you said he cut, relationships or didn't want you to be with your family and friends, did they not question on the other side of that what's going on? Why are you absent? What's happening? Why can't you do, these things anymore?
Sort of. A lot of times I think I hid it pretty well. Like I would make excuses for it because I didn't want to deal with the aftermath when I went back home.
Okay.
But
And that's
that's what,
important.
yeah, and that's what led to the whole, the end of it because I got tired of telling my friends no and went with a friend of mine to a birthday party. And that was, like I said, it did me a favor because I didn't have to go back.
So a birthday party is what opened the door for you to leave that first marriage.
Hmm.
Okay, so we've made it through that one. We've recognized some signs now. Maybe I'm paying attention to, how someone speaks to me or how they make me feel, or I'm having to, put friends and family aside.
Mm-hmm.
So walk us now through, I'm here because you have a son at this point, right?
I did, yes.
And so now you have you and your son, which was not your husband's
Right,
son. So I just want to be clear in that there was no conditions in which you needed to continue having him involved in your life.
right. He
So
came
now it's you
after.
and your son. Walk us through the freedom you felt leaving that marriage and where you went from there.
It was a good feeling, but a weird one, I guess. I had moved back in with my parents because I didn't have anywhere else to go. Thankfully, they let me stay with them for the first year of his life. I worked a lot and tried really hard to get us our own place, and I did that. I got us our own place. Um, I started school when he was 2 online, so that was good. But then through the job I had, I met my second husband, which was a friend of my boss's. So it didn't last very long, a couple years, I think 5.
5 years is a long time to be in a rough marriage.
Yeah. 5 years is like a weird number for me because both of them lasted 5 years and there's 5 years between each of them.
Okay, so in a 15-year span, this is really where you had this shit that kind of piled up.
Hmm.
In your second marriage, how was that different? Because we've shared, you've gone through 2 domestic violence situations. The first one sounds like it's pretty verbal and emotional. There was some throwing of things there. Your second marriage is the opposite end of the spectrum.
Hmm.
Share, please, what you're comfortable sharing and what you experienced in that relationship.
So he was very opposite. Um, he was very charming. He was very handsome. He wanted to take us to do things. Um, take my son to the park, take us out to dinner, just all the things that a single mom is going to be super excited about because I've been by myself for 5 years.
Right.
Um, like I said, I met him through my boss, so I figured they know him. I trust them. I've worked for them for a long time. I don't think they would, introduce me to someone that was not a good person.
Mhm.
So I started talking to him, and looking back, there were lots of red flags that I didn't pay attention to. A lot of it because he's from another country. A lot of it I chalked up to being cultural. A lot of people would say, oh, it's just because he's not from here. He doesn't understand the way things are here. So I kind of adopted that in my thoughts because I thought that was true. But when we first started dating, we dated a while, and it was okay. Like I said, it was very much like over the top. Let me take you to dinner. Let me do this. Let me mow your yard. Let me do all these things. And then he started to get really, I don't know the word for it. It was very much like manipulative, but it was very sugar coated. So it wasn't like in your face like my first husband. He was just hateful. And this time, this was like, it was almost like he would flip it and make me feel like it was me that was causing the problem. Like, I was trying to do this nice thing for you, and you weren't letting me do it. So that was really hard because a lot of times it made me feel like it was something I was doing wrong. Um, he got really into like parenting my son, which I didn't like the way he did that. He was very strict, and we ended up breaking up at first. It didn't last very long. He would come and leave gifts on my porch, or he would come and, send me messages and be like, I'm sorry. All the excuses you can imagine for his behavior. So we wound up getting back together. And he had moved in with me at my house. And then it just seemed like, looking back, things happened so fast after that. Like, we got engaged, and we decided to have another child, and we got married, and all these things happened very fast. And at the time, I didn't realize that, because it just seemed like what was supposed to happen, I guess. But there were little things here and there, but after I had our son, it's like he changed into somebody else. Before that, we had fights, and there were times when he would get mad. Like, he would try to discipline my son, and I would step in because I didn't like the way he did it. And we had fights, but it was never as bad until after I had my second son. He It's just like I said, he became a totally different person. Like, he tried to make me do things I wasn't supposed to do after my C-section, and he was very demanding, like the way that I took care of our kid together. Like, it was just really a huge shift. He got real ugly, and he would discipline my son physically, and then it would cause us to fight. And then of course, if I didn't allow him to do that, then it was me that got the brunt of it. So, I don't know how many times I can count. I had, slaps, grabs. Like, I thought he broke my wrist once. He didn't care anymore. It's like, after I had our child, it's like, that was it. Like, he knew that he had a hold of me, and he didn't care what he did after that.
Almost a sense of ownership of you, like you're right.
Yeah, very much.
So when you say that he would make you do things post cesarean, because we know, as women, giving birth it's beautiful, but it's hard.
Yeah.
And then add in that additional care you need post cesarean delivery. Are we talking about household things like, trying to keep up with the home while, in recovery mode? Are we talking about, you gave the example of mowing the yard. What was something that he expected you to do that you were not supposed to, but you did anyway?
A lot of things. Like, he would try to make me wrap my stomach. Like, I guess it's something they do there, but he was very demanding about it. And I could not get him to understand, like, I have a giant incision. Like, I can't do that. Or, taking care of the baby, like, at night and stuff. I was trying to heal up and not sleeping anyway. And that was very much my job. Like, didn't matter. Or, like, things between me and him, like intimacy things. Like, you have a time frame after, and that was not happening. Like, absolutely not. He didn't care.
So no boundaries with the healing process whatsoever.
None.
And now you've experienced in this second marriage true physical, in that whole aspect. You talked about him grabbing you, slapping you, kind of pulling and tugging on you.
Mm-hmm.
Were you seeing those things in your oldest son as well from him? Or were you always able to step in and stop that?
I thought so. There were times, he would, and it was always silly stuff. Like, there was once that he had told him to do something. I think it was go pick things up in the backyard. And my son was young, he was a little boy. He doesn't want to do that. But he had told him to do it, and he had been outside playing, and he had went out there and hit him in the leg with a pipe. And I had gone out there and gotten in the middle of it which, like I said, I don't regret it. I wish I would have left then, and I did, but I went back because all
And
the apologies, it's like you think they're honestly being sincere. Like he was honestly sorry and it wasn't on purpose. And years later, like it hasn't been that long, I found out about things that he was doing when I didn't even know. Like he was physical with him way more than I ever knew.
and that's really where your shit story took a deep turn,
Yeah.
was after you left. And you said something to me that I'd never heard before, but makes total sense. You said abuse by the courts.
Hmm.
So now you've left the second marriage, you've had enough of it. Can you tell us what you mean by abuse of the court so that maybe someone who is feeling that or experiencing it knows to step up and seek counsel, get some help?
Yeah. So when I left, we tried to do things outside of the court because our son was only 4, I believe. Um, we tried to do things outside of court. I tried to, allow him to have visitation. We tried to do it as civilly as possible. It didn't work. So I wound up ending up in court for divorce. We got the divorce. We got a agreement for him to see our son. After he got his agreement, he obviously automatically started doing whatever he wanted because he doesn't feel like rules apply, I suppose.
What do
He
you mean, did whatever he wanted?
he had he had a way of doing things to get to me by using our son. So
Okay.
if the court said have him back at 6 o'clock, he would come back at 6:30 or 7 o'clock. Um, he would bring him home. It was obvious that he was doing things with him when he had him that weren't okay. He brought him home with wet pants, like he had wet his pants. My son didn't wet his pants. He had brought him home throwing up because he had forced him to eat too much. Um, Numerous things. I could go on forever, but there were things happening that were not okay. So we ended up back in court after the visitation agreement because he wasn't following it. Um, I had gotten an attorney and he had told me to write everything down. We had called DHS. We had gotten everyone that we knew to get involved, and they didn't do anything about it. So we continued literally until January of this year in court over
And
that
when did you
very
start the court process? What year was that?
2018.
2018 to 2024.
Yeah. And every time I thought that we had resolved it, he would take me back to court over something. And it was almost like he had found a new way to be abusive because he knew it was disrupting my life. He knew it was causing me really bad anxiety to go to court because we had to sit there and see each other. He would stand behind me in the courthouse to be intimidating because most of the time I was by myself or with my attorney. It got bad enough my attorney actually would drive me to the courthouse from his office just so he was there, because he would do things like sit behind me in the row behind me, and I knew he was behind me, and he very much was doing it on purpose. The only reason it stopped this year is because I got a different attorney.
You chose Amber.
Yeah,
So it's been years that you've been walking this path. You have a
years.
new attorney. You have someone who's standing up for you.
Mm-hmm.
You're in a happy, healthy marriage today.
Yes.
What is it that you believe shifted in you, Amber, that took you from being okay with this living with this, putting up with this. I'll change who I am. I'll put things off, or it's okay. I'll do the best. I'll take what I need to take for my kids. What I would like to hear is what got Amber on the other side of that shit.
I don't know. I don't know that I know, but it's just, I think after, both my kids have come out of it and been so like amazing. Like my oldest, he blows my mind. Like he is doing wonderful. And my youngest, he's been in counseling this whole time, and he just, I guess watching them really like made me realize I don't have to keep doing that. Like I don't have to let them keep running over the top of me. And I think I realized like being, I moved out of town far away where he didn't know where I lived. Like I just got away from it. And then once I was away from it, I realized like I don't have to put up with that anymore.
Can you describe, because you're in this field,
Hmm.
what a healthy boundary looks like?
Yeah.
Just from your perspective, it's, a healthy boundary to me is going to be different, but what your healthy boundary is today.
I have learned very much that you have to be aware of how something's making you feel and how it's making you live your life. Like looking back, like I said, I was cut off from everyone and I didn't even realize it. Like I didn't notice it at the time. And then one day it's like everybody's gone except me and him. And the same with the other, they isolate you. They don't want people to know what's going on. Or they make you think, bad things about yourself. But I don't know. It's like once you stop and think about it, you have to, if it's taking your peace, like you can't do it. Like I had no peace ever. Like I felt like I wasn't even living. Like I was just numb all the time.
Amber, your story is impactful because you've gone through this twice, but you come from an intact family.
Mm-hmm.
You come from a family where mom and dad are still married today. You
Yeah.
come from a family that you had an example of healthy love,
Mm-hmm.
and how dynamically shifted your marriage and your love life had been. And I think it's important that people recognize that we can come from beautiful families
Mm-hmm.
and things can change us in ways we never thought possible. And that's why I wanted to talk about that healthy boundary and what you found.
Yeah.
I want to give you an opportunity to share any last thoughts that you may have, or anything that you would think would be pertinent for someone to know. Again, we're not offering any advice, but anything that you think would be helpful. We talked about the boundaries, we talked about the peace, but anything else that you can share.
I think I would just tell someone else, like, don't be afraid. Like, the court system is a scary thing. It is. It's very scary. It's very intimidating. But don't let them run over you because these people, some of these people that are that abusive, like, they find ways. And sometimes it's, to the people in the court system, they just see it as someone taking you back, but it's not. Like, it gets to that point where they're using that because it's the only thing they have left to use. And it's a thing. Like I'd never heard of it. I've never paid attention to see it, but it's a thing. Like when they get desperate and that's all they have left, it's just as bad.
It's real and it's raw
Yeah.
right there. And like you said, to stand behind you or to sit behind you in court, to just continue to push that negative energy towards you. I want to tell you how proud I am of you for standing in your truth, for owning it, but most definitely not being afraid to fire your first attorney and go for a second, because really that is your advocate in that moment. And that takes some courage to do, because you've already walked part of this journey with them. And so for you to say, enough's enough, I need someone here for me, I find that very impactful with where you've been.
Yeah, it was the hardest decision because he was with me through the whole thing. But there was a moment at the end, he had made a comment, and it was, I think it just woke me up. Like, he had made the comment that I just didn't want to agree to anything. And it hit me like a truck because I have agreed to more than I ever wanted to agree to.
And I'm glad to see today you've agreed to your piece.
Mm-hmm.
Amber, I want to tell you thank you for coming on and sharing your story. I know that it's delicate. I know that it's not quite over. Your son, is still with you. He's still growing and things. But I want to just leave you with love and to tell you thank you for coming and spending your morning with us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. You just took another step towards owning your story and thriving against all odds. This is Affirm That Shit. Somehow I thrived. If you're ready to keep kicking ass, subscribe now and let's keep breaking barriers together. Remember, life's a battle, but somehow you'll thrive.